How are you? Good evening.
I'm good.
Okay, let's get started here. Okay. Okay, so I think we're doing Yud Zayin. It says here, yeah. So it says כתב הגור המולייתות שקוראים פשטידה או טורטה הנאפות בתנור בבשר בדגים בגבינה. So what is this? We're talking about, it's got basically a dough on top and bottom, and inside there's a filling with meat or fish or cheese, things like this, and we have things like this today, many examples, like we have the calzone and we have borecas, things like this, and all kinds of things like that. Um, there are meat borecas also, and all kinds of things like that. So what's the bracha on them? So, right, just to emphasize that here we're talking about a dough, which is white dough. It's like, the same as bread. It's not flavored dough. Uh, so that's why it could be that it's hamotzi. So we'll see what it says here, right? So it says, "Af agav de basar bedagim ugbina ikar mevarchin aleim hamotzi." So it says, even though here, right, the filling is the main issue, the main element there, but nevertheless, he says we do hamotzi. Why is that? The min dagan chashiv le inshe, because people consider this to be like a um how would you call this? They consider it to be like a bread dish, something with bread. In other words, it's like like a sandwich, basically. So it's for a meal, and that's why it's hamotzi. It's not a snack food, really. That's the whole thing here. V'hem divrei Shibboleth Leket. It says it comes out from Shibboleth Leket. This thing b'shem Rabbeinu Ishaya, from this rabbi. V'tama mishu debatar haminin azlinan. So it says the reason is because we go according to the category. Dine birkat pat asui me'orez v'dochan v'shar minei kitniot katav Rabbeinu b'siman reishchet. So it says regarding other types of breads, which are made from other materials, right, from other ingredients. For instance, you have bread which is made from rice or right millet or all kinds of legumes like that. He says that we're going to discuss in a later chapter 208. Okay, so that's the end of this chapter. So let's see Bet Yosef. I mean, let's see the Shulchan Aruch, and we can move on to the next chapter. So it says here, uh, Nehama de handaka, vehu lechem sheofin b'shipud, not this one, next one. This one. Pashtida nefet betanur bebasar or bedagim or begvina. Mevarech alea motzi ubirkat hamazon. Right. So these, as we said, right, these types of foods, which is basically, uh, a dough on top and bottom, and in the middle there's a filling. So he says these are hamotzi. Um, okay. So now, right, what about things like this Georgian hachapuri? Is that also hamotzi? It fits into this category, no? But the thing is, the reason why it does not is because there the dough, is like mixed with the oil and the right all kinds of ingredients like that, which change the texture of the dough, and it's not really like a meal so much when you have a dough like that. It's more like a snack, whatever. And that's the reason why those things are not going to be hamotzi. They're going to be mezonot. Same thing also goes like with your borekas, which are, the modern day borekas. Most of them are not made with white dough. They're made with dough, which is, has oil in there and all kinds of ingredients like that. So because of that, it's not really like a meal kind of thing. It's more like a snack, and therefore, right, you're going to bless on that mezonot, unless, right, you have a large amount, which is 200 grams, as we said, for egg size. So there, it's going to be hamotzi. It's like a meal already. If you have that quantity.
Have we given a ruling on like croissants and like biscuits?
Yeah, so croissant is like, same as the borekas, right? It's not a white dough. So definitely it's going to be mezonot, unless you have a lot of it. Like there are different sizes of a croissant, right? So if you're having the large ones, like two of those is already a meal. So, that's already doesn't matter anymore if it's sweet or not sweet. But now biscuit, so biscuit is an interesting thing, The truth is, that we Easterners, we're not really big into biscuits. So, in other words, I'm not really so experienced with this kind of thing. But from what I know, right, my limited knowledge on this food, a biscuit, it's basically coming as a bread. It's going with a meal. But on the other hand, it's not really a white dough usually. It's usually got some additives in there. Whether it's oil or right, or could be also milk, by the way, depending on the type of biscuit it is. Milk, all kinds of additives there, So the thing is, the bottom line will be, with a biscuit is what is the purpose of it? If the purpose of it is to go with a meal, so then it's going to be hamotzi. But if the purpose is more like a snack food or dessert, right, then it's going to be mezonot. So my gut feeling is that it's really, biscuits are for meals. So if that's the case, it should be treated like like a roll, basically. Same thing as a roll.
That would make sense. That would be how I would use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much. I mean, again, right? I don't really eat them, so I don't, I'm not really very familiar with the culture of the biscuit.
It,
But
it's I mean You could be making it an entire meal in itself with like gravy on top, but usually
Right,
I would
right. Yeah, it's basically, it's just a fancy kind of bread.
it would be used the same way a dinner roll would be.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's it. It's a fancy bread, basically. That's what it is. So, accordingly, that would be hamotzi, minister, apparently. But, right, on the other hand, if you go according to the psak of the Rambam, who said that flavored bread is going to be mezonot, right? And that's the custom of many Sfardim, like that. So then it would be mezonot unless you have like a large amount. For me, I'll tell you, this kind of approach does not really make sense so much. So it's not my cup of tea. So what I mean to say is that I think even the Rambam, would admit that in our times, since we eat these things as meals, even he would say that it's hamotzi. But a lot of people, are accustomed to make mezonot on these types of flavored breads. What can I tell you? Not personally, I don't agree with it, but there is a custom like that. Okay, so I think that's the end of the chapter. So let's go. Let's move on to the next one, which is going to be Kuf Samich Tet. Okay, so okay, this is an interesting chapter. Okay, a lot of people don't know about these kinds of things. So here it says the tour. Right. So now we're past the breaking the bread, and now we're going into the meal. So here it says like this, right? That afterwards, after you break the bread, the next step is to have the meal, and מביאים לפניו לאכול, וכל דבר שמביאים לפניו שיש לו ריח. So it says the two or something interesting, right? Which is that when you bring something to the table and it has a smell, so the problem is, that when you have a nice smell with the food, it's very tempting, to eat that stuff. So therefore, the rabbi said that you should give also some of it to the waiter who's serving you. Why is that? Because if you just let him serve you and he's smelling that stuff and he can't eat it, this is going to be very frustrating for him, it's going to cause him anguish. So therefore came the sages and told us that we should give some to the waiter as well. So ואדם תאב לו צריך ליתן ממנו מיד לשמש. ומי הוא מידת חסידות הוא ליתן לו מיד בכל מין ומין דגרסינן. So he says the proper thing to do, in other words, the more pious approach, the pious approach is what? To give him every little, every type of food that you're having. Let him taste everything right away. Why? Because otherwise he's going to be tempted, it's going to be bothering him like that. הכל משין מפני השמש, פירוש שלא ליתן לו ממנו עד שיאכלו מסובין חוץ מבשר ושמן, בשר שמן, כל השנה, ויין בתקופת תמוז, שצריך ליתן לו מיד, והסיקנה כללה דמילתא, so he says the conclusion there is, the general rule, כל דאית לריחה, whatever has a nice smell to it. Ve'it bekiuha, and also it has kiuha, right? So what is kiuha? So we're talking about like a pungency. You have to give him that. Because that kind of food, which has the smell and the pungency is very tempting, and when you don't get it, it's like it's causing you anguish. So therefore the sages consider that to be like a sort of cruelty, You don't give it to the waiter when he serves you. You're causing him to suffer. That's what he's saying. Okay, that's interesting. So I'll read that one more time just to get the proper right whatever. So you know what I was doing, right? I was just I came on at 8:30, and nobody was there in the class, so it just like left off. And then, I waited for somebody to come in. Once somebody came in, I came back in again. That's what I did. So, that's how it turned out this way. But anyway, right? That's okay. Um, when I came in at 8:30, nobody was there yet. So I just went off, and waited. Because what happens is, when somebody comes in, I get an email. So I know somebody's in there. Okay, I'm just texting David. Maybe he'll come in, I don't leave this poor guy out. Okay, so we'll get moving. So again, right? The tour says that uh, it's the proper pious approach to this is to give him from everything that you eat. But at the very least, you should give him the stuff that that smells, tempting, and it has pungency to it, right? Which has that attractive smell, right? So that kind of stuff you should give him because it's very frustrating where when you smell this stuff and you can't eat it, so it's not nice to treat people that way. That's why the rabbi said, give him to taste it.
Is this only if he's a Jew, or is this include like racial order too?
That's a good question, right? I mean, yeah. So the truth is that it doesn't really say, whether he's Jewish or not Jewish. Um, but I must tell you that there is another place in the halacha where, in the Rambam, he talks about a person who has a non-Jewish, servant, right, whatever, in his house. And, it says there that, you should treat him, with this kind of like dignity, to allow him to eat the food that you eat and all that stuff, because it's just not nice, you're being cruel, so it's like, just not giving him, making him frustrated. So I think, with a non-Jew, it may not be an obligation, but it's definitely, act of, piety, that the person should do that. Okay, whatever. But we'll get into that, a little bit. We'll see more like what's going on. Who are we talking about here? But I mean, on the face of it, we're talking about a Jewish waiter, right? But as I said, even with a non-Jew, a person who's got the proper orientation will give it to him because he doesn't want to hurt anybody, doesn't want to cause anybody anguish. Right? The rule is that we're not even allowed to cause anguish to our animals. So I mean, so there you go, right? That's the proof. You shouldn't cause anguish to anybody. It's not proper behavior. Okay. So anyway, getting back to what we said, ומי הוא מידת חסידות הוא ליתן לו מיד מכל מינו מתגייסנו בכתובות הכל משין לפי מפני השמש מפירוש שלא ליתן לו ממנו עד שיאכלו המסובין חוץ מבשר שמן כל השנה ויין שישן בתקופת התמוז. But there's another Gemara he brings here, right? The tour, which seems to say a little bit different. That what? It says over here that you can, wait to give the waiter to eat. You don't have to give him right away. So what does that mean? So in other words, what we can do is first eat it ourselves and then give it to him afterwards. Except these two things, he says, right? Which you shouldn't do that. What are those two things? Uh, Fatty meat all year round, and old wine, right? In the summer, you got to give that to him right away. So why those two things? Because they have like an enticing smell, and so you're causing him anguish like that. That's the problem. So don't wait till you finish. Give it to him now. Okay. So let's go to Bet Yosef and see how he explains this. So it says here, called the it. Yeah, I'm sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Um, Pirish Rashi explains on this. He says, so let me just read the whole thing from the top. It says like this: right. So this is from the tour. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Anyway, so he brings Rashi, right, as we said. I'm sorry. So kiuha kiyan shinaim igror belaz kol deitle recha o kiuha mazik in at et mishe ochlin lefanav veno ochel. Look what he says, right? Incredible. Rashi says that when you have something like this, right, which has an enticing smell or pungency, right? He says that things like this, if you don't give it to the person and he smells it, it causes him harm because he smells it and he can't eat it. חד ספי מאכיל את השמש כל מין ומין, וחד ספי ממין אחד בתחילת סעודה לסובה, ומשאר מיני. So he says, right, that there was two different approaches. One person, what he did was he would give him like each type, to taste from each type of food, which was coming on the table. And there was another approach where he was giving him just one type, but letting him eat, to satiation until he gets his fill. So this way he's satiated, he's satisfied. So let's move on. Pegasina tu hatam, it also says there furthermore, Hanhu tre chaside mar kadim safe umar meacheres safe. The kadim safe Eliyahu mishta'eh be'adeh. Look what he says, incredible. Wow. So he says that there was two pious rabbis, okay, who were in that time, whatever, and one would give to the waiter like right away, and the other one would give it like at the end, make this poor waiter wait, right until he's about to faint, from all that good smell. Right? So look what he says, right? He says the one who will give it in the beginning, Eliyahu, right, will come to speak with him, and the other one, Eliyahu, will not come to him. Right, so it's a known right tradition that Eliyahu and Navi would come to speak to the pious rabbis of the generation, So one of them was a little bit more pious than the other. So therefore, Eliyahu would come to this one, but not to the other one, right? He only came to the one who gave the waiter to eat right away and not to wait and have to suffer, from that good smelling food. There you go. Okay, good. So then he continues the tour. ומי לא ייתן לו כל זמן שהכוס בידו או ביד בעל הבית, דתניא, לא ייתן אדם פרוסה לשמש. So he says, but nevertheless, right, even though we said you should give the waiter, the food to taste right, all the good stuff you got there, but he says, nevertheless, what you should not do is give him the food when he has the cup in his hand, or it's in the hand of the host, right? The one who, right? The host, yeah, the host, yeah, head of the household. So why not? What's the problem if they're holding the cup like that? So because it says there's a bright that says in Gemara, Lo iten adam prusa shamash. You should not give right a piece of food to the waiter. Let me just look inside the tour itself there. Yeah. So it says here, בין שהכוס בידו, שמא מתוך שהוא טרוד בפרוסה, ישפוך הכוס. That's what he says. Right? So he says that you shouldn't give it to him when he's holding the cup. Why is that? Because since right he's he's concerned with the food, so he may come to spill right the fluid which is in the cup. It also could be the same thing where it's in the hands of the host, as we said, right? So what does that mean? Maybe he's going to look to see what they gave to the waiter, and he's going to spill the cup. So right? אלא אם כן יודע בו שנטל ידיו. Okay, that's already something else. So anyway, I was telling you, right, as we said, that don't give him the food when he's holding a cup, right? Whether it's the waiter or the host, because this could cause him to spill it. Okay, let's see Bet Yosef on that. So says Bet Yosef, brings a source for this, Per Kol HaBasar, right? It's in Chulin, Kuf Zayin Amud Bet. Peresh Rashi explains there, Lo yiten adam prusa l'shamash. Don't give, right, your that food, to the waiter, be'echad mina orchin kamar. Talking about one of the guests, shelo yichos bal habayit כשהוא שותה חלקו יין. So he says, why? We don't want the host to be angry, when you do that. And that may cause him to when he's drinking, right? That he may come to, that it should go down the wrong pipe. הוא מזיק לו בלאו כעס נמי מתוך שחש שלא יכלה עליכם. So it's even without the anger, right? Because he's concerned that the bread should not be finished, should not be consumed. Um, sorry. Yeah. הוא מביט ומציץ במה שזה נותן לכוס ונותן והכוס נשפך מידו. Right? So in other words, what happens is it's going to distract the host when he does this, he's going to be looking around, curiosity to see what's going on, and because of it, he's going to come to spill, right, the cup. Also, the same thing also applies if the cup is in the hands of the waiter. Ad kan, that's the end of it. Okay. משמע בין שהכוס בידו בין כעת השמש, כלומר דלא ייתן פרוסה בעוד שהכוס ביד השמש. So right, he says that means that you shouldn't give, right, as we said, the food while he's holding the cup. אבל רבנו ירוחם, ברבנו ירוחם כתב, he writes, דכאה, that it's referring to האורח, talking about the guest, he says. כלומר שלא ייתן פרוסה בעוד שהכוס בידו. Don't give him, right, the bread when he's got the cup in his hand. Should oreach, right, talking with the guest. Shema yayin bo, because maybe he's going to look at it. Balabait, the host. Al shelokeach hamachal, because he's taking the food. Shema yechaser deorchim, maybe it's going to be lacking for the guests. They pull a kos biado, so they may drop the cup. Okay. Interesting. כתב רב יונה, says רבי יונה, פרק אלו דברים, right over there in ברכות, מבית עמוד ב', עד לא ייתן פרוסה לשמש, that which we said, right, don't give this piece of bread to the waiter, דווקא לשמש, אבל לשאר בני הסעודה יכולים לתת לו. But he says that's only regarding the waiter, but regarding the other, people there, the guests, whatever, you can give him זה לזה, one to another, כשהכוס ביד, when the cup is in the hand, בעל הבית of the host, שמאחר שהוא זימן אותם, because since he invited them, אינו מקפיד במה שהם נותנים אלו לאלו. So he's not really particular that they're giving to one to another, right, the food. ולא חיישינן לקלקלה, so therefore we're not concerned he's going to drop something there. Okay, so we have two different opinions right here, different approaches over going on here. Regarding this issue. ואסור ליתן more than two, it's like three. ואסור ליתן לו פרוסה, אלא אם כן יודע בו שנטל ידיו. Another thing the Torah says is that you shouldn't give him, right, the bread unless you know that he washed his hands, because he's not allowed to eat without washing. וגם זה ברייתא, it says that's also ברייתא, שם השמש שלא נטל ידיו אסור ליתן פרוסה. So what are we talking about here, right? We're talking about the waiter. That if you know the waiter did not wash his hands, so don't give him, some bread to eat. Not allowed to do that. You're causing him to sin. That's a different issue. So the general rule is, if you're going to cause a person to sin by giving him a certain food because, he didn't wash his hands or he's not going to make a blessing, whatever it is, right? You're not allowed to give it to him because you're causing him to sin. That's what he's saying. Okay. So it says about Yosef regarding that, Gam ze braita sham. It's also braita there, Hashama shelo natal yadav, right? It says in the braita, if the waiter didn't wash his hands, asur iten no prusa letoch pib. You're not allowed to give him, right, bread to eat, even in his mouth, even though he's not really touching it with his hands, because he's not allowed to eat without washing his hands, even though he's not touching it with his hands. מדברי רבנו נראה את זה לתוך פיו, לאו דווקא. So it says, according to the Torah, it seems like not exactly in his mouth, אלא אפילו לידו, even in his hand, you're not allowed to do that. Nami asu, it's the same thing, no? So whether you're putting it in his mouth or you're putting it in his hand, it's still forbidden because he didn't wash his hands. Okay, let's see Shulchan Aruch. So we got a few elements over here going on. So we'll put it all together, B'ezrat Hashem, and make it all work, hopefully. Okay, let's see. So it says here, כל דבר שמביאים לפני אדם, שיש לו ריח ואדם תאב לו, צריך ליתן ממנו לשמש מיד, right? So, again, important right piece of halacha here, which is that when you have a waiter serving you food, okay, and you have some good smelling stuff there, which is going to tempt the waiter. So what you got to do is also give him a piece to eat, because otherwise it causes him suffering, causes him damage, sort of a damage there. So what makes him, attracted to the food? It's because of the smell, He smells it. So then he moves on. So, and also, right, another point is that he says, give it to him right away. Don't wait till the end, Don't be like that guy, right? That Eliyahu didn't want to speak with him. So give it to him right away, Don't tell him, yeah, don't say, yeah, I'll give it to him in the end, when we're done. What do you mean when we're done? Then he's hungry now, right? Give it to him now. He's going crazy. He's going nuts, this guy. You're making him suffer, poor guy. So give it to him now. Okay, interesting. So regarding your question, right, if he's Jewish or not Jewish, let me just see if anybody addresses this question. I'm interested in the Mishnah Berurah, maybe. Right, interesting. Mm, yeah, he doesn't talk about that issue, about Jewish or not Jewish, but he does mention something interesting here, which is that he says what happens is like this, when a person smells something and he desires to eat it and you don't give it to him, so then he says all the saliva that he produces in his mouth, he says you shouldn't swallow it. Why? Because that saliva can harm him. So what should he do? He says he should spit it out. Can you imagine? That's saliva. So, in other words, what we see here is that there's some real danger going on here, right? With this kind of thing. And that's why a person shouldn't do that, make them suffer like that. There you go. Okay. But it doesn't talk about the issue of Jewish or not Jewish. Um, so then he says, right, Umidat Chasidut hu liten lo miyad mikol minumin. So he says the pious way to do it is to give him like, every type of food you got there. So this way, he's happy, right? He's all content. No, he's got nothing to complain about. You're giving him everything. ולא ייתן לו כל זמן שהכוס בידו. So then he mentions that issue, right, that we said. Don't give it to him when the cup. Don't give it to him when the cup is in his hand, as we said, or in the hand of the owner, right, of the host. So we said, what's the reason for that? Because we said, right, that they could drop the cup like that. Drop it like that. Could drop the cup, so, because it gets distracted by that. So therefore, right. So let's just explain this, right? Why does the waiter get distracted, and why does the host get distracted, right? So the waiter gets distracted because he's working, so it kind of like throws him off. So you shouldn't do that. And the host, why does he get distracted? So there we said the reason is because he's just like, sometimes it could be like he's gonna get ticked off, because you're giving this bread, and he may get worried, that there's not enough bread left over for everybody else. Or right, another thing is that he wants to, he's curious about it, whatever. So because of the curiosity and it's throwing him off basically, right? So therefore it could cause him to drop the cup and spill the liquid there. Yeah, that's pretty much what he says. The Mishnah Brura, Magen Abraham. Let me see the Mishnah Brura. Just 1 second. Right here. Yeah, exactly what I told you, right? It brings all that stuff. Yeah, so basically, right, we're worried about these people getting distracted by that, and they're going to spill the cup. So therefore, they said, right, if they're holding the cup, don't do it at that time. Whether it's the waiter or right the host. Okay, fair enough. So let's see what else we got here. The Dafka Shamash, right? It says so. Says the Mishnah, the Rama. That's only regarding the waiter. But it says if we're talking about somebody else there, at the meal, he says you could do that. Not really a problem. Lo prusat pat. So it's also don't give him a piece of bread unless you know, right, that he washed his hands. Otherwise, it's forbidden for him to eat that stuff. So you're causing him to sin like that. That's the reason why you can't do that, right? By the way, that shows you that answers your question. That shows you that he's Jewish, this guy, right? Because otherwise, what would you care if he washed his hands or not? If he's not Jewish, right? He's not really obligated to go, to wash his hands. So we're talking about a Jew. You see from there. But as we said, right, that even if it's a non-Jew, there is a measure of piety here to do the same thing, because you're causing him suffering. As it talks about in different place. If I remember correctly, that's what it says there. That when you have like a non-Jewish servant, you have to be merciful on him and give him all the food that you eat. And don't say, well, you're a peasant, so we'll give you, the cheap stuff and we'll eat the good stuff, That's not the, what I mean? You eat the cheap stuff, we'll eat the good stuff, right? And, but you're causing him to suffer like that, so it's not a good thing, So therefore, even for a goy, there is a measure of piety to avoid things like this in order to avoid causing him suffering. Okay, very good. So, if you do all this as we said, right, Eliyahu will come to speak with you. So, if he does, let us know what he tells you, right? So, we want to get also the lesson there from Eliyahu. So, make sure you tell us whatever it is. Okay, Bezrat Hashem. So, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Right? Pray for our friend, the Bruria. I think they took her into surgery today, probably early because, she was having severe pain. This poor lady. So, Hashem should give her refuah shlema, Bezrat Hashem. And hopefully we'll hear good news. And we'll see you tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov.
Thank you.
God bless.